Today it's a little bit of a different podcast because I would like to share a part of my personal story and experience with a malignant narcissist and talk about one of the biggest mistakes I was making while I was in that particular relationship. For those who've been following me for a while or even read my book, Narcotic Love, that you can find on Amazon, you know that my relationship with a malignant narcissist was relatively short. It was merely 5.5 months long. However, at the end of it, I was feeling so sick and exhausted. It not only felt as if I'd been married to this person for over a decade, but I also walked out with extreme symptoms of complex post traumatic stress, such as depression, anxiety, panic attacks, or flashbacks. I experienced extreme weight loss, far beyond my usual set point. And I ended up developing the autoimmune disease vitiligo that I will have for the rest of my life. It took me altogether 2 years in counseling to put myself back together after that experience and untangle everything from my past that led me into this mess to begin with. It took me another 5.5 years, so 7.5 years in total, to even dare to approach and get into a new relationship. So you can see the long-term impact it can have on a person, even if it had only lasted for such a short time. And due to its short timeline, I thought, who was I to create awareness? I kept telling myself that 5.5 months sounded like a bloody joke. Nobody would take me seriously. Because can I call 5.5 months even a relationship? We certainly were committed to each other. At least I thought so, because behind my back I knew he wasn't. It wasn't until a few months after I had escaped this situation that I stumbled over the story of a woman in the United States who, sadly, committed suicide in a similar dynamic after merely 5 months in a relationship with her abusive partner. I also found out that her tragic end happened in September while I was still in it, and she left her children behind. I realized then that the duration of the relationship doesn't matter, because that woman could have been me. My experience was valid, like anyone else's, just like hers. And I finally understood how extreme malignant narcissists can be, as I felt suicidal after merely 5 months with him as well. But how did it even get this far when every cell of my body was literally screaming at me to walk away? Now, I'm not going to rehash all the details about trauma bonding that we've all experienced and know about. It certainly contributed to my overstaying. However, this is not the big mistake that I was making. So what did I personally do wrong in that dynamic that I take accountability for? And by the way, if you made the same mistake or were in a similar situation, I would appreciate if you shared it in the comments with us. My narcissistic ex-partner and I worked in the same creative industry together, which is where we met. For those who don't know it yet, if you happen to listen to me for the first time, I work in the Hollywood film industry. And this whole thing happened right around the peak of the Me Too movement, when people in the entertainment industry started to speak up about their experiences with predatory or sexual abuse in the business. It was the perfect timing to find a support system right after, and ways to protect myself. However, it also showed me the extreme conviction and naivety of the person I was dealing with, and the certainty that he had that he would not be called out one day. But that's exactly what I did. I had no other choice because I had to find ways to protect myself at my workplace. On top of that, he had been triangulating me with several female coworkers of ours I felt obligated to protect as well. And that was my big mistake. Feeling the obligation to protect or even save others while putting my own life at risk. Now, I'm not saying that speaking up about it and warning others, especially other women and those he triangulated me with, was the mistake, for that happened after the fact, meaning after the end of our relationship. But it was the sacrifice I felt obligated to do while I was in it in order to protect these women that he mentioned and engaged with frequently. Once I realized what was going on behind my back and the many names of innocent women he threw into my face, or even the predatory gaze I noticed he had on them when we happened to work together while I was standing right next to him, I instinctively took on the role of the martyr and kept the space of the girlfriend next to him occupied to save others from the same ordeal that I was going through. I had the knowledge. I knew what I was dealing with. And because of that, I thought I could manage the situation and keep everybody else safe by staying, while literally killing myself in the process of it. But would I have truly been able to protect them indefinitely? Certainly not. I was expecting to die of exhaustion, heart failure, underweight, some kind of disease because my immune system seemed basically non-existent, or perhaps an accident due to a lack of concentration. My body was giving up on me, to the point I could barely hold a cup of coffee anymore, for it felt too heavy. Anything was possible, and covert narcissists usually have a tendency to stay until the bitter end, especially when they've found a reliable and self-sacrificing source of narcissistic supply who is loyal to a fault. So I wasn't betting on getting discarded anytime soon to easily get replaced. The first time I tried to leave the relationship was after merely 2 months, because the emotional and psychological abuse started out really extreme right from the get-go. And I knew it wasn't getting any better, and slowly moving toward physical violence even. But I told myself I was committed, and for some reason, I also fell into the self-destructive habit of counting every month like it was a relationship milestone or an accomplishment to unlock that I wanted to work hard for. And when I say work hard for, it basically just meant to survive. It wasn't until the 5th month when the first suicidal thought crossed my mind and really scared me. I was sitting on the kitchen floor and repeated the words, "I don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore," like a mantra that was supposed to wake me up. I also reminded myself in that moment how he had manipulated me on the first day by telling me about his former girlfriend who died when she was with him, giving him the opportunity to play the poor widower and prey on women's empathy, including mine. It shifted something inside of me. Instead of wanting to stay, I now promised myself that I won't allow him to play the poor widower over my dead body to attract his next victim. Instead, I made the conscious choice to leave and expose what was going on behind closed doors to warn the others. To my own surprise, they believed me and expressed how very much repulsed they were by his approach. It dawned on me that the triangulation I was experiencing throughout our relationship was fabricated and a product of his delusion and inflated ego. I admired the other girl's ability to see through him and the way they set boundaries accordingly, a skill that I had yet to learn. So yeah, overstaying my visit and sacrificing my own life in an attempt to save others was probably my biggest mistake. For you always need to save yourself first before you can save others. If you would like to learn more about narcissistic abuse or my personal story, please check out my other podcasts on my YouTube channel and my book Narcotic Love, which you can find on Amazon in both English and German. Thank you very much for listening, stay safe, and have a great day.